Lily, at 9, carried a weight beyond her years. Her mother, gone to cancer the year prior, had left behind a void filled only by worn scarves, a forgotten garden, and Scout. 2 years old, a German shepherd with eyes like warm amber, Scout was more than a pet. He was Lily's anchor in a world that had seemingly abandoned her. Her father, consumed by grief and the relentless demands of his job, was a distant presence, leaving the house to a suffocating quiet. In that silence, Scout became her universe protector, confidant, and the steadfast presence that never left. Their backyard was their sanctuary, a vibrant stage for games of chase and whispered secrets. That Saturday began no differently. Sunlight spilling over the fence, Lily absorbed in chalking hearts on the concrete while Scout, ears perked, tail a rhythmic metronome, guarded their peace. Then, without warning, the fence rattled, and 3 older boys, faces hardened by an unsettling disregard, invaded their sanctuary. Scout, a flash of loyal fur, lunged, a guttural growl vibrating in his chest, placing himself between Lily and the looming threat. But they were unyielding. One of them, a lanky shadow with a cruel smirk, seized a metal rake from the garden bed. The first blow landed with a sickening thud. Lily's screams ripped through the air, pleas swallowed by the deafening silence of the neighborhood. The metallic ring of the rake against bone echoed, relentless, until Scout's body convulsed, then collapsed. Still, Lily fell over him, clutching his bloodied fur, her small fingers frantic, trying to erase the crimson stain as if it were mere dirt. Her nails scrabbled against the wooden fence, desperate to scale it, to summon anyone. But no one came. The boys eventually retreated, their laughter a chilling counterpoint to the desolate quiet they left behind. The rake clattered, the fence creaked shut. The yard, once a haven, now held a silence that seeped into the very bones, a silence that would forever haunt Lily. As she lay there, whispering, "Please don't go," into Scout's still fur, something within her shattered. Not her innocence that had been stolen the moment the world turned its back. What broke was her fundamental belief that goodness would be protected. She didn't know it then. But to houses down, that final, desperate scream had pierced the carefully constructed silence of a man who understood brokenness intimately. And he was about to step into her life, irrevocably altering its course. Caleb Monroe, 55, was not a man who stayed silent in the face of wrong. Not anymore. A retired firefighter, he had spent decades charging into infernos, pulling strangers from the jaws of chaos, but no training, no experience, had prepared him for the indelible mark of failure, a failure that bore the name Emily. 8 years old, with soft blonde hair and a room overflowing with stuffed animals, her bedroom door had not opened fast enough. That memory, a relentless phantom, haunted him. Now, he sought solace in the grime of old engines, drowning his guilt under the hood of a perpetually stalling 1980 for Chevy. That afternoon, oil coating his forearms, the familiar hum of classic rock, a dull thrum in his ears, a sound sliced through the air like shattered glass. Not the usual squeal of children at play, but a raw, desperate shriek. He froze. It lasted mere seconds, but it was enough. Caleb dropped his wrench, wiped his hands on his shirt, and bolted down his driveway. He didn't hesitate, didn't question. He scaled the fence, propelled by an instinct honed by years of facing the worst of humanity, and found a tableau of despair. Lily, barefoot, face streaked with dirt and tears, was hunched over the limp form of a German shepherd. Blood stained her hands, knees, and shirt, yet she seemed oblivious. Her world narrowed to the shallow, rattling breaths of the dog. "Don't go. Please don't go," she whispered, a broken litany. Caleb stopped, a twist in his gut. For a fleeting, agonizing second, he saw Emily, the same size, the same helpless vulnerability. He blinked hard. Not this time, not again. He approached slowly, his voice low and carefully modulated. "Hey," he said. Lily flinched, curling tighter round the dog. "It's okay," Caleb added, kneeling. "I'm not here to hurt you. I'm here to help him." No response, only the faint, strained sound of Scout's breathing. Caleb removed his jacket, gently draping it over the dog's battered body, his fingers searching for a pulse, faint, but present. Without another word, He slid his arms under Scout, lifting him with the delicate precision one reserved for a fragile child. Scout remained motionless. Lily, too, remained silent, frozen. Fists clenched, tears falling in a steady, silent stream. "You coming with me?" Caleb asked, not waiting for an answer. He moved towards the fence, Scout's weight a heavy, sacred burden against his chest. When he turned back, she was there, directly behind him, barefoot, her small steps remarkably determined as she navigated the gate. The drive to the emergency animal hospital was silent. Lily sat in the passenger seat, knees hugged to her chest, eyes fixated on Scout, willing his chest to rise and fall. Caleb drove with a single-minded purpose, the outside world a blur. No father emerged from the house, no neighbor peered from a porch, no one even glanced up, and that, Caleb realized, spoke volumes. This wasn't just about a dog. This was about a little girl abandoned by those who should have been her protectors. At the animal hospital, the receptionist hesitated. "Are you the owner?" Caleb's gaze was unwavering. "No," he said, his voice ringing with a newfound conviction. "But he's family to that girl. So yeah, I am now." And with that, he pushed through the doors, a dying dog cradled in his arms, followed by a silent girl, leaving behind a neighborhood that should have been shamed by its profound silence. The moment Caleb pushed through the glass doors, the bustling activity of the emergency animal hospital stilled. Nurses froze, a vet tech dropped a clipboard. Scout hung limp in his arms, a heavy, silent testament to a brutality the white-tiled floor seemed to absorb. Blood had soaked through Caleb's jacket, but he didn't even glance down. He locked eyes with the nearest staff member and spoke. A single word, raw with urgency. "Help." They moved as one. Scout was whisked away, a trail of crimson staining the sterile floor. A young, focused vet, already gloved, rushed in behind him. No forms, no questions, just the universal language of immediate crisis. Caleb turned to find Lily still rooted by the door, unmoving, unblinking. Her fists were clenched, knuckles stark white. Her shirt was torn, shoes missing, knees scraped raw. But the tears had ceased. That was almost worse. Caleb knelt beside her. "He's in good hands," he said gently. "They're going to do everything they can." She offered no verbal response, no nod, simply stared through the doors as if blinking might make Scout vanish. They were led to the lobby, a clean, warm space adorned with posters of smiling golden retrievers and pamphlets about feline dental care. It felt incongruous, too soft for the brutal reality they had just escaped. Caleb bought her a juice box from the vending machine, offering it silently. She didn't take it, so he placed it on the table and sat beside her, not attempting to fill the void with empty words, simply being there. Time stretched, thick and slow. A nurse emerged, offering a grim update. Multiple rib fractures, internal bruising, signs of head trauma. Scout was stabilized, but far from out of the woods. Surgery was imminent. The next 24 hours were critical. Lily remained silent, curled on the bench, arms wrapped around her knees. Caleb couldn't tear his gaze from her. He replayed the afternoon, the terrifying proximity of his own inaction, the choice to remain in his garage, another bolt tightened on an old truck. Then Lily spoke, her voice barely a whisper, a fragile breath. "Why didn't anyone help?" The question landed like a physical blow. Caleb looked down at his hands, still stained with Scout's blood, and took a long, measured breath. "I don't know," he admitted, the truth heavy. "Sometimes people freeze, or look away, or think someone else will step in." She didn't respond, but he saw the subtle slump of her shoulders, as if hearing the words spoken aloud made the injustice more real, more devastating. He reached out, hesitated, then placed his rough, calloused hand over her small, trembling one. "But I'm here now," he said, his voice firm, "and from now on, someone will." It wasn't a promise he made lightly. Caleb had a past littered with unkept promises. But this one he meant, looking at Lily, seeing the raw vulnerability of her shattered world. He understood. Scout wasn't the only one fighting for survival. There was another life in pieces, one just beginning, and perhaps, just perhaps, he had been granted a second chance to do what he couldn't all those years ago. To save them both. By Monday, Scout remained in the ICU, clinging to life, a fragile testament to resilience. Lily was quietly reintegrated into her 4th grade classroom as if nothing had transpired. No welcoming committee, no counselor waiting. Just a plastic chair, a half-used pencil, and a teacher distracted to meet her eyes. Lily was a ghost, a silent presence. When the boy beside her whispered, "Heard your dog got beat up 'cause he's a mutt," she didn't even flinch. What no one seemed to realize was that children talked, and in Maple Grove Elementary, gossip traveled. Faster than facts, rumors swirled. Scout had attacked someone and been put down. Lily had screamed so loud she'd broken a window. The 3 boys, architects of the chaos, still strutted through the hallways, smirking, radiating an unpunished arrogance. Their parents, lawyers, loud and influential, ensured the school issued a carefully worded statement about addressing the incident privately. Translation: nothing had been done. Meanwhile, Lily receded further into herself. The vibrant spark that once animated her was dimming. No more chalk drawings, no more spontaneous giggles. Caleb, driving her to school each morning in his old Chevy, witnessed the slow fade. He'd offer music, she'd shake her head. He'd offer to walk her in, another shake of the head. It was as if someone had turned the volume of her spirit down to an inaudible whisper. Then, one afternoon, something shifted. Caleb arrived to pick her up and found her alone on the swing set, unmoving. Recess had long ended. The teachers were gone. Lily simply sat, staring at the dirt, Scout's collar, clutched in her hand. Caleb walked over, sat on the creaking swing beside her, and waited. Minutes passed in companionable silence before she spoke, her voice barely audible. "He used to chase my shadows." Caleb looked at her, then back at the collar. "Scout," she whispered. "Every time I walked, even at night, he'd jump at my shadow like it was a game." Caleb offered a gentle smile. Sounds like he knew how to make darkness look fun. That night, back at Caleb's house, he pulled out old tools, handed Lily a hammer and a pair of gloves ridiculously large for her small hands. "We're building something for Scout," he announced. She blinked. "Is he coming home?" "We're going to believe he is," Caleb replied. And just like that, piece by piece, plank by plank, Lily began to hammer. Together, they constructed a small wooden shelter in his backyard. Nothing elaborate, just a simple frame. A roof, a warm corner for Scout, if and when he returned. But something profound happened during that construction. Lily spoke more, asked questions, even smiled a fleeting flicker, but present nonetheless. Caleb showed her how to use a level. She, in turn, doodled chalk hearts onto the wood when he wasn't looking. It wasn't merely a shelter, it was a physical manifestation of her nascent hope. When the world refused to acknowledge your pain, sometimes you had to build a space for it yourself. And Caleb understood that if they could build something from broken pieces, perhaps, just perhaps, Lily wouldn't remain broken either. What he didn't know was that something else had begun to build, too, a storm, quiet at first, but gathering force. And this time, the town would have no choice but to hear it. Caleb hadn't intended to ignite a wildfire. He simply wanted people to care. One evening, after Lily was asleep, he sat on his worn porch, laptop open, heart heavy. The shelter they'd built stood strong in the twilight. Scout, a fighter, clung to life in the ICU. And Lily, in her own quiet way, was fighting too. So, Caleb did the only thing that felt right. He told the world. He posted a photo of the newly constructed shelter with a stark caption. "This is for a dog named Scout. He saved a little girl's life and 3 boys nearly beat him to death while she screamed for help. No one came, no one stopped it. But we're still hoping he makes it home, because some things deserve to survive." He closed the laptop, thinking little of it. By sunrise the next morning, his phone hadn't stopped buzzing. The post had gone viral. 20,000 shares before dawn. Comments poured in from strangers, people who had lost pets, survivors of bullying, victims of abuse, flooding the thread with support, heartbreak, and outrage. It was relentless. Animal rights groups reposted it. News outlets called his landline. A major rescue organization reached out, offering to cover Scout's escalating medical bills. Caleb was stunned, grateful, but mostly deeply stunned. What shocked him further was the swift shift in the narrative's focus. Maple Grove, a town unaccustomed to public scrutiny, was suddenly under a blinding spotlight. The pressure cracked open its carefully maintained facade. Teachers who had once remained silent began to speak up. It became clear this wasn't the first time those three boys had inflicted harm. Other children came forward. One parent even admitted their child had been too afraid to report past incidents. The community could no longer ignore it. The silence that had once protected the boys now burned around them. Naturally, the boys' parents attempted damage control. They hired a PR representative, released a tone-deaf statement calling it a misunderstanding between children, and ludicrously claimed the dog had overreacted and their sons had acted out of fear. But the internet was relentless, not with photos of Scout wrapped in gauze, hooked to IVs, his swollen eyes struggling to stay open. No one could look at that and call it a misunderstanding. Lily eventually saw the post. Caleb showed it to her. When she seemed ready, she read the words slowly, her lips moving with each line. When she reached the end, she didn't speak, just pulled the phone closer, scrolling through the thousands of comments, strangers writing things like, "You're so brave and Scout's a hero and we believe in you." She looked up at Caleb, her voice barely a whisper. "They see us now." It was a small utterance, but to Caleb, it was everything. Something irreversible had occurred. A town that once turned its back had been forced to look into a mirror, and for the first time, it didn't like what it saw. The truth was out. The story held power, and the girl they had tried to silence was just getting started. The call came just after 6 a.m. Caleb, having fallen asleep again in his armchair, jolted awake as his phone vibrated against his chest. He answered on instinct, bracing for bad news. Instead, the nurse's voice was calm, even excited. "Scout's awake." 2 words. That was all it took. By the time Caleb and Lily arrived at the animal hospital, they were greeted by name. They were led through quiet hallways to the recovery room. And there he was, Scout, propped up on a soft mat, tubes still attached. His body more gauze than fur, but those amber eyes, they were open, and they were searching until they found her. Lily didn't run, didn't cry. She walked straight to him, dropped to her knees, and placed her head against his chest as if it were the only safe place on earth. Scout blinked slowly. His tail barely moved, just a faint twitch, but it was enough. It was everything. The nurse, visibly moved by the scene, snapped a photo. That photo would be seen by millions within 48 hours. The internet exploded. The caption read, "Scout woke up, and the first thing he saw was the girl he protected." People around the world ignited. Comments poured in from France, Brazil, Japan. A group of firefighters from Canada even sent a video message, proudly announcing they had named their new station dog Scout in his honor. Caleb scrolled through the deluge of messages, stunned by the sheer force of strangers caring about a dog and a girl in a small town they'd never heard of. But it wasn't just sympathy. They wanted change. Letters inundated the school board. Parents demanded accountability. The mayor's office was forced to respond. And for the first time, the families of the 3 boys stopped talking through lawyers and started hiding behind closed doors. Meanwhile, back in Maple Grove, something else was shifting. Neighbors who had once looked away now appeared on Caleb's porch with home-cooked meals. One man offered to build a ramp for Scout for when he came home. A group of teenagers started volunteering at the local animal shelter. The most unexpected moment came when Caleb found a letter on his porch, no name. Just 5 words written in shaky penmanship. "Thank you for not freezing." He didn't need a signature. He knew it came from someone else who had once stayed silent, someone who no longer wanted to. As for Lily, she visited Scout every day. She brought him his favorite squeaky toy. She sat beside him with her math homework, whispering updates like, "You didn't miss much. Division's still the worst." But deep down, she knew something profound had changed. Her voice was slowly returning. Her laugh even surfaced once, quiet but undeniably real. And every time Scout managed to lift his head, just enough to press his nose against her hand, it was a profound reminder, you're not alone anymore. He was fighting for her just as much as she had fought for him. And somehow, a battered German shepherd had achieved what dozens of adults couldn't. He had made an entire town feel again. Scout was healing, slowly but surely. His body still carried the scars, the bruised testament to violence, but his spirit, remarkably, remained untouched. Each day brought incremental progress, a longer gaze, a stronger tail wag. A half step closer to the door when Lily walked in. And with every inch of Scout's recovery, something else profoundly shifted. Lily herself. Caleb noticed it first in the small things. She began humming in the car again, not loudly, not cheerfully, but a soft, almost unconscious melody that hinted at a mind venturing into safer, lighter spaces. She started drawing again, to nothing grand, just simple, heartfelt images. A dog beneath a tree, a house with a swing, a tiny girl hugging a massive, smiling German shepherd with bandages on his legs and a crown on his head. It was then that the school counselor reached out. She had seen the news stories, the viral photo, the image of the shelter, the outpouring of global support. She wanted to meet Lily, not to fix her, but to hear her. Caleb asked Lily if she would be comfortable with it. She shrugged, the most he ever got from her, but she didn't say no. The following afternoon, they sat in a quiet room, sunlight streaking through the blinds, a box of tissues between them, though neither reached for it. At first, Lily said nothing. The counselor didn't push. She simply said, "You don't have to talk about the bad parts. You can start with what you love about him." Lily blinked, then whispered, "He chases shadows." The woman smiled. "That's a good start." Over the next few minutes, Lily's words came in broken pieces, fragile memories. Scout always waited outside the bathroom door. He howled during fireworks and needed his ears covered. He once tried to jump into the washing machine because he thought a squeaky toy was inside. Caleb, waiting outside, overheard it all, the small, innocent details of a life nearly stolen. But then, her voice began to tremble, her fingers picked restlessly at the edge of her sleeve. Her eyes drifted, lost in a harrowing memory. They laughed when they hit him. The counselor remained motionless. "They laughed," Lily repeated, her voice gaining a desperate clarity. "They said he was just a dog. They kept saying that while they hurt him, while I screamed." Silence filled the room, heavy and drowning. The counselor's voice was barely audible. "That shouldn't have happened. None of it should have." Lily nodded, but she wasn't crying. Not anymore. By the end of the session, something profound had shifted again. The next day, the school board received a formal statement from the counselor, a full report, based on Lily's testimony. Not speculation, not rumor, but first-hand truth, powerfully backed by public pressure and community outrage. They had no choice but to act. A formal investigation was launched. Old complaints about the boys resurfaced, incidents the school had deliberately buried or conveniently ignored. One teacher, implicated in past cover-ups, resigned before the report even dropped. And the boys, who had once strutted with impunity, no longer smirked in the hallway. Two of the boys' parents, desperate to salvage their reputations, attempted to reach out to Lily's father through lawyers, offering settlements. Carefully worded apologies drafted by PR teams. Lily never read them. She didn't need their guilt wrapped in pretty paper, because now she had something infinitely more powerful than pity. She had a voice, and when a child who has been silenced finally speaks, you can either listen or be silenced by the undeniable truth that follows. 3 weeks after Scout first opened his eyes, the vet finally uttered the words Lily had been holding her breath for. "He's ready to go home." Caleb nearly choked on his coffee. Lily didn't speak immediately, simply stared at the doctor as if the words were a trick, as if she had misheard. Then a smile bloomed, not a soft flicker, but a real one. The kind that pushes through layers of hurt and finally embraces the light. When they brought Scout out, wearing a custom vest to support his weak spine, stitches still tucked beneath his fur, he looked smaller, yet somehow prouder. His walk was slow, shaky, but when he saw Lily waiting at the door, he pushed forward with every ounce of strength he had left. And when she ran to meet him, her knees buckling under the weight of everything she had been holding, he leaned into her as if gravity had never mattered. Caleb cleared a space in the back of his truck, laid down a blanket, and lifted Scout with a tenderness that declared, this wasn't just a dog. This was family. When they pulled into the driveway, the shelter Lily had built stood waiting. The wood had weathered slightly from spring rain, but it stood tall, solid, like a promise made real. She led Scout inside herself, step by step, and laid down beside him on the soft mat Caleb had placed. They stayed there for hours, no words, just breathing, curled into each other as if time ceased to exist. But Scout's return wasn't the end. It was the beginning. The town of Maple Grove had changed. You could feel it in the air. People who once turned their heads now showed up. One neighbor offered to build a new, stronger fence around Lily's backyard. A local vet started a campaign called Scout's Stand, offering free trauma care for injured animals. Kids at school wrote letters to Lily. Some apologized, some simply wrote, "You're really brave." And then came the invitation. A community event was being organized downtown, something small but public. The theme, voices that deserve to be heard. They wanted Lily to speak, and Scout to be there. 2. Caleb didn't pressure her. He simply told her about it and left the decision in her hands. The night of the event, she asked for her best dress, the one her mom had bought her before she passed. It still fit, just barely. They walked onto the stage together, Lily holding Scout's leash, Caleb standing quietly off to the side. The lights weren't blinding. The crowd wasn't massive, but the silence, it was electric. Lily stepped up to the microphone, her knees trembling, her voice almost too small to hear. She looked out at the faces, neighbors, classmates, teachers, then down at Scout, whose amber eyes never left her, and she spoke. "I didn't think anyone would help," she began, her voice gaining strength with each word. "And no one did at first. But someone heard me, one person. Then the world did. Scout didn't save me just from those boys. He saved me from being invisible. He made me feel real." She paused, then lifted her chin, her gaze unwavering. "And now I'm not afraid to speak, because if I don't, who will?" There was no applause at first, just silence, the kind that wraps around your spine and makes you feel like something sacred just happened. Then, slowly, the crowd began to rise. Not a single person remained seated, not one. It wasn't a mere standing ovation, it was a recognition. Lily and Scout walked off the stage as if walking into a new life, because they were. Justice didn't arrive in a courtroom or a headline. It bloomed from hearts waking up, from a girl finding her voice, from a town deciding silence wasn't good enough anymore, and from a dog who never once stopped protecting her, even when the world had initially failed to do the same.